Hello, guys. So today I'll be walking us through digital media planning, and this is going to be like a beginner's guide for you if you are a media planner, a media buyer, and you want to have like an understanding of how you ought to plan your media and digital media now specific. So I'm going to walk us through the things to take note of, the things to put in place, and then in subsequent videos we'll now look at how to actually build the plan itself. But before you can start building plan, you need to have an understanding of what media planning is about. We're going to cover the concepts and all the strategies that you need for success. So whether you're a new marketer or you're just starting out or you're looking to level up your skills, right? So this is actually what you need to get started. So to continue, first we will have to look at defining your business goals. No, just like for any business, for any campaign, there has to be a goals, and a goal in this scenario, your business goals here would be that overarching aspiration of the organization. What exactly is that number one thing that the organization wants to achieve? Now I know for depending on the stage the business is, they would have different aspirations and different things that they want to achieve. So it could be things like they want to increase brand awareness, or they might be at a critical point where they really need to drive sales or generate leads, or probably they even want to improve customer engagement. So whatever the business goal is, first is it has to be clear to you. You need to really understand what that goal is about, right? So once you know the business goals, then the next thing is to turn those business goals into smart objectives, right? So in goal settings, you hear the word smart a lot, and that smart basically just means something that is specific. That's for the S. We have something measurable, achievable, relevant, and also time bound. So what that therefore means is that if you're setting any objective for the overarching business goal, those objective has to be smart. It has to be very specific. Now, when it comes to goals, it doesn't have to be ambiguous. It has to be clear. It has to be something you can measure at the end of the day. It has to be something realistic, right? That is achievable and something that also has a time to it. Say, for instance, you say the goal is to generate sales worth X amount of money by so time. So it has to be clear. It has to be very clear. So, and what Smart Objective basically does for us is that it helps us to have a clear framework, right, in how we achieve our business goals. So through strategic digital media campaigns. Because the truth is, if you are doing any media plan, all of this has to be clear to you before you even get into it. So you have to understand exactly what needed or what is needs to be achieved. So once this is clear, then the next thing you do is to understand your audience. Who are the people you are trying to reach? Right? So in understanding our audience, we're going to look at two areas. The first is the buyer persona. So when we talk about buyer persona, so buyer persona is just a detailed fictional representation of your ideal customers, right? And this would include their demographic, interests, their behaviors, their motivations, right? It's crucial to understand, the people you're trying to reach. So, in creating a buyer persona, what you are literally doing is that you are more like creating a fictional representation of who your ideal customer is. Say your customer is Mr. A, right? Your ideal customer is Mr. A, right? And Mr. A probably lives in New York, or he lives in Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, and is interested in this. He likes to listen to music, or he watch a lot of YouTube content, learning about business or whatever it is. So it's more like you make it detailed. So one thing about buyer persona, it has to be very detailed. So you literally write out the detail of your ideal customer. So once you have the buyer persona clearly done, then what you can then do is to now do your segmentation. Now, depending on what kind of business you're trying to promote for, or you're trying to do a plan for, or that would determine how the segmentation will be done. In some cases, you might not necessarily have to do segmentation, but in most cases, you would have to do segmentation. So when we talk about audience segmentation, what we're referring to here is you dividing your target audience, right, into smaller groups, right, based on shared characteristics, right? So, say for instance, you have, or you can segment your audience, say by region. For instance, let's say you're trying to target a nationwide, you can say, okay, I will segment my audience by region. So I want to target people in the west, people in the south, people in the north, or I can even segment my audience by, say, the time they are born, or I can use Gen Zs, I can use millennials, I can use baby boomers. I can divide it depending. So, especially in a case where I'm trying to reach a wide audience, and I want to try to segment so I'm doing this so that I'll segment them in order to be able to reach those different people with messagings, right, that will be relevant to them. Yes, I want all of them to buy what I'm selling. I want all of them to engage with my business. However, the way I'm going to communicate to them will be different. So in order to do that, I have to first understand how to segment those audiences. So this is very critical to any plan, because once you understand your audience, then I would say you are very close to achieving success in your media buying, right? So these two areas are very critical: your buyer persona and your audience segmentations. So once you've done this, the next thing you want to look at now is the platform selection. So what platform are you going to reach these people on? So again, once you have done your segmentation the right way, right, that would also help to inform the kind of channels to use. So like we all know, there are several channels that are available, digital channels that are available for us to know to push out our content, to push out media, and to buy media from. There are a lot of them. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. So depending on who your target audiences are, right, that will determine what kind of platforms you're going to use, what kind of channels you're going to use. For instance, Facebook, for instance, is very powerful for reaching wide audience. Obviously, they have a large population, right? Especially so if you're doing a business around social media marketing, you have a pool of people that you can reach on Facebook. Instagram, on the other hand, is known to be good for visual content. You are building brand aesthetics, and especially if you're doing content, or let's say your business is around beauty, fashion, food. You have to use, obviously, Instagram. We see a lot of people Instagram and even TikTok. We also have Twitter, which is very good for real-time conversation, right? So businesses who wants to be engaged with in rapid discussions and news sharing, they see them often use this platform. And also YouTube, which is a very powerful video content. In fact, the most used video platform, right, for educational materials. YouTube is the biggest, right? So if you want to reach your audiences because they consume YouTube content, right, then that means you have to be there. So like I said earlier, before you choose your channels usually will be informed by your target audience. So once you have clearly done your target audience segmentation and buyer persona, that would help you to now choose the right channels for your campaign. So once this is done, then some key metrics to understand when it comes to media buying and planning, right? So very importantly, I'm just going to mention a few of them here. So we have impressions. Now, when we talk about impression basically is the total number of times your ads or your content were displayed, right? So better still, you can say that it's the number of times that the platform pushes your ad, or like I usually say, it's the number of times your ad is being served, right? How many times did any of the channel you're using push out or serve your ads, right, or your content, right? That's what we refer to as impression. Impression is very critical to any campaign. There's no campaign you run, you would always accumulate impression, because obviously your ads needs to be served, needs to be pushed out. So the number of times it's been pushed out is what is referred to as impressions. Then we have reach. Now, reach in this case will now be the total number of people or the number of unique users who saw your ads at least once, right? The number of unique people who saw your ads at least once, right? That is reach. Then frequency will now be the average number of times a user saw your ads, right? So you see impressions, reach, and frequency. I see many times it's been misunderstood. Now, these three metrics are very vital to understand as a beginner. If you're starting, it's very, very critical to understand this. So I'm just going to recap. So impression is the number of times your ad is being pushed out. Reach is the number of unique persons that sees the ad. Why frequency is the average number of times each person sees the ad. So what that therefore means is that if my ad is served, say, 100 times, and 50 people sees the ad, the implication of that is, mathematically speaking, that means that I have an average of 2 times each person saw the ad, because the ad was served 100 times and just 50 people saw the ad. So an average of 2 times each person saw the ad, right? So that's basically that. Then we have the CTR. CTR basically is known as the click-through rates. So click-through rate here will now be the percentage of user who clicked on your ads, right, after seeing it. The percentage of users who clicked on your ads after seeing it, right? Then conversion here will now be the action, right? What is the action that you want the user to take? Is it making a purchase or signing up for a newsletter? So conversion is whatever you have defined as that action that you want the user to take. Right, so that's what we call conversion. Conversion rate, therefore, will now be the percentage of user who completed that desired action, right, after seeing the ad, right? Then we have return on investment. Basically refers to the return you get from your investment, right, in digital media. So that is how, when you spent an amount, what was the return of that investment on your campaign? Then CPC would be the costs for each clicks, like how much does it cost you when someone clicked on your ad. Now CPM in this case, which is also known as cost per mille, would be the costs per 1,000 ad impression. Remember I mentioned earlier that impression is the number of times your ad has been displayed, while CPM will now be how much you are charged per 1,000 times or per 1,000 ad impressions, right? Then CPV in this case would be the costs of each view of your video ads. That is how much does it cost you per view. That is what is referred to as the CPV. Now, all of these basic metrics are very important to understand. So you can just go through them again. You can watch this part again so that you have clarity on this. I'm going to do more explanation on that in subsequent videos. So when it comes to media planning, it's therefore important to understand this metrics, because this is what you're going to be using to build up, on your plans. Now, what are the common mistakes to avoid when you are doing media planning? The first, which is very important, is ignoring your target audience. So many times people can just go ahead to start planning without understanding who the target audience is, because failing to understand your target audience can lead to irrelevant messaging, and you begin to waste resources. But when you have clear-cut understanding, right, of your target audience, right, it helps you to craft the right campaign. It helps you to craft the right messaging. It helps you to even know the right channel to select when you understand your target audience. Now, another mistakes that people must avoid, or that we see people usually fall into, is lack of measurements. Now, the truth is, when you don't track, you really cannot know what is working. If you don't measure, you really cannot identify where a problem is coming from. So, but tracking helps you to prevent that from happening. So it's essential that you have a clear understanding of your campaign performance. So when you're tracking, say for instance, your conversion, you really want to know how many conversion have you gotten when you're running a campaign. If you're running a sales campaign, for example, it's important that you must have set up the conversion tracking so that you can tell how much have you made at the end of the day, and vis-a-vis the amount you have spent in terms of your ad, right? So this is very critical to understand. Then lastly, when it comes to common mistakes that you must avoid, is overlooking platform specificity. Now, it's important to know that each platform has its own unique characteristics and audience preference, right? So when you don't optimize your content and campaign for each platform, it can hinder you from achieving the right objective or achieving your business objective. So one thing in planning is to understand that every platform is unique, and sometimes it might even require that you create content, right, that would suit a particular platform from the other. So it's very vital that you take note of these 3 mistakes that you can avoid when you're creating your plan. All right, so going into the next thing is now, how then do we craft our digital media plan from all that we've looked at, right? Let's now put them together and say, this is what we need to create our plan. So first is you have to establish clear business goals and smart objective, right? Because this will guide your media planning effort. We've said that clearly earlier. Your goals has to be smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and also must be time bound. The next thing is to conduct a thorough audience research, right, to understand your target markets, their needs, and their digital behaviors. Like I said, if you don't understand your audience, you'll be reaching them the wrong way with the wrong messages on the wrong channels. So you must ensure that you have clear understanding of your audience. It will require a lot of research, right? But when you do it right, your campaign will surely be successful. Then you also have to choose the most effective platform for your target audience and campaign objective, right? So every channel, is good for certain things and for certain kind of audience. So you have to consider each channel, right? You have to also even consider what is the potential reach in those channels, right? Who are the target audience in those channels, right? What are the advertising options those channels have? For instance, some channels will be good for reaching professionals more than some other channels, right? Some channels will be effective for video-led content rather than other channels. So you need to have those clear understanding of the platform specificity in order to build your plan. Then once you have this understood and you've done this, the next thing is to develop a content strategy, right, that align with your brand identity and target audience. Yeah. So you have to understand what content strategy. Many times the creative guys will probably do this for you, but your input is also very important because you also have done your research. So when content are being created, you can say, no, this content might not suit well or might not sit well with this kind of audience, or this content might not work effectively in this particular channel or on this particular channel. So your input is also very important. So once you've done this, the next thing is to now begin to set your budget and allocate funds to different platforms and campaign elements. So this is where you now begins to say, okay, how much am I going to put on Meta? How much am I going to put on YouTube? How much am I going to put on LinkedIn? How much am I going to put on Google Display? And all of that. So you begin to now assign budget effectively. And lastly is now to define what metrics you want to measure, right? So you define your key metrics, and you also have to put in place the right tools for tracking, analyzing those campaigns, right? So once you have all of this in place, then you're good to go with your media plan. So just to wrap up, so when it comes to digital media planning, it's a dynamic and evolving field, right? But you have to master the fundamentals, which is what I'm trying to do for you here, so that you can navigate the ever-changing digital landscape, right? So when the right strategies is put in place, you can achieve your business goals, right? And create impactful digital campaigns. So I'm sure that you learned one or two from here. So what I'm going to do in the next video, which you should watch out for, would be to now take you through the step-by-step approach of creating the plan. So we're going to be working through, a Google Sheet or an Excel document to see how do we assign budget, how do we do our calculations, and how do we achieve a proper media plan, right? How do we build it from scratch? So that's the next thing we're going to. So I hope to see you in the next video. Cheers.